That alone, verse number 74. Innumerable particles of dust inhere in earth, and there is no difference in the earth that constitutes the particles. Just as inert matter exists in consciousness, consciousness finds its expression here in the body. Therefore, when contemplated, this is one. Commentary. During the course of our lives, we are confronted by innumerable problems. When we are hungry, we want food, and when we are thirsty, we want something to drink. There are a number of pressing necessities like these. We also take the time to think of problems that are not so immediate, but are at the same time more serious and fundamental. Some of us give our whole existence in dedication to the greater issues of life. If we take a contemplative renunciate like the Buddha, a wise teacher like Krishna, or Jesus Christ, a rishi like Yajnavalkya of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, or a guru like Narayana Guru, who has given these 100 verses of self-instruction, one common feature is they all have an air of certitude about them. They are absolutely certain of the ground on which they stand. They are not conducting experiments. They are not eager to prove anything. They are all well established in a light which is the light of all lights, on a stable ground which lends its stability to everything. Until you yourself find that light and stand on your own stable ground, some of the references given by the great teachers may not make much sense to you. In this particular verse, there is reference to the ground and also to motes or particles of dust. The bhu is the ground, and the motes are the elements of existence. The totality of the particles makes up the substance of the earth or the universe. Although Narayana Guru is speaking here of dust particles, you should take this metaphor to refer to the finitude that constitutes each moment of your life. The hands and legs you use for movement, the body that sustains you, the seat on which you sit, the person to whom you speak, and the words you use, even the air you breathe, all these are motes of dust. My finger is as much a part of me as my nose, though the function of each is different. At the same time, they belong to a single body. Like that, you and I are dust, motes belonging to a greater universal reality, a universal substance. The motes vary because of their attributes, while from a distant perspective, they all appear to be very much alike. The motes are perceivable. Sounds can be heard with the ears. Sights can be seen with the eyes, and aromas smelled with the nose. We can also conceive smells, conceive sight, and conceive touch. From the actual extension of things, we can go to an ideal conceptualization of them, where we are able to interrelate things with their attributes conceptually. Like many dust particles make one clod of earth, we can put ideas together to make a world of ideas. By knowing many particles of dust, we can build an edifice with them by piling brick upon brick, so to speak. We can also pile argument on top of argument to build up theories. But there is a limit beyond which we cannot go with our senses. The area where they operate has a boundary. The area where the mind operates is also limited. It has its frontier too. So part of our experience lies in our sensory perception, and part in our mental conception, thought processes, reasoning, and so on. Beyond these frontiers is a greater reality which cannot be reached with the mind or the senses. When you look at it in this way, the ground seems far removed, obscure, and unknown. But the fact that the ground is actually within the moat, within your sensations and your reasoning, shows it to be nearer than the near. This is why the Ishavasya Upanishad says, it is farther than the farthest, and yet nearer than the nearest. It is the most external, yet nothing is more internal. What fills the inside and the outside is that reality alone. We can see two major attributes of the ground. One is the extension in space and time of the many particular formations known as bodies or material objects. But there is also a knowledge in us which is not spatial or temporal. It can assume any form, conceive any space, and observe duration. It has form and is paradoxically formless, at the same time finite and infinite. The nearest we can come in thinking of it is in terms of consciousness. But it is a consciousness which remains unconscious as it evolves into motes or the modulations of consciousness Vedantins called modes. In this verse, Narayana Guru calls the world of extension, where things can be perceived, Jadam. The totality of consciousness in which all our experiences of extension are placed, he calls Chit. They are so intertwined that they cannot be separated. There is a necessary complementarity between the world above, of information about the motes and their attributes, and the ground below, which sustains all of them. What is above as particles is finite and discernible, while the ground is infinite and indiscernible. Within the substance there is a vast scope of attributes, and the very discernibility of these attributes makes the ground indiscernible. A search for the absolute or the self, call it the real if you prefer, cannot take us to a vision of the whole if it is confined only to the attributes of the various motes. We can have many discussions and arguments and can make individual experimental cases, but we have to remember we are only dealing with the motes or the modes, not the underlying substance. If a man truly believes in God, then it would be ridiculous for him to look for proof of God's existence. Only one who does not know what God is needs reasons and argumentation to establish his existence. Once somebody asked Narayana Guru when and where he had learnt everything. His answer was, first everything came to me as one knowledge, and afterwards I found it is also written in books or discussed by people. This is how it happened to the Buddha, to Christ, to Yajnavalkya, to Muhammad, to all the sages. If two lovers get into an argument and demand of each other that they define what love is, the poor creatures can't do it. They don't know what it is because it is outside the bounds of definition. One who loves is already in the state of being established in love. It is not anything to be spoken about or elaborated upon or argued over. It comes only as a spontaneous flow. When we listen to music, there is no need to have the scale explained or for the beauty of the lyric to be pointed out. It is an inward experience into which we melt, a spontaneous symphony. This is the bhu, of which the Guru says it has no differentiation within it. It is not divisible. When we cater to the necessities of life at a surface level, keeping ourselves busy with the motes, we must also keep our feet planted firmly on that stable ground. It's like a tree having its roots deep in the unknown, out of which its sustenance flows. The water and minerals and whatever the tree needs enter through this invisible network in precisely the way in which the tree can make use of them. Like that, you should have your own roots in the ground of the Absolute, while the inner nourishment you receive, like the trees, is kept well hidden from the public gaze. In Jesus' life, we can see alternating phases of his going to the multitude and then retiring to the mountaintop or walking alone on the shores of Galilee. Following this way, one seeks orphanage in God, in the Absolute, by getting lost in the indiscernible, which is the mystical ground. When a poet writes a poem, she has to give her mind away to the unknown. At first there is silence, while the mind sinks deep. Then suddenly it becomes surcharged with a tremendous energy. Inspiration flows in as a great tide, and words bubble up, motes of dust from the ground of the Absolute. They can be placed one after another, so the poet writes them down. Once the poem is written, it is in finite terms, yet that finitude holds within it the legacy of the infinite, the richness of the spirit from which it has come. Beauty, love, compassion, anguish. Whatever constitutes life is encapsulated in those words, and to those who have a similar transparency of mind, the words give up their secrets in communication. If the poet is Bhu, the words she writes are the podi, the dust. If the artist is the Bhu, every stroke of the brush is the podi. If the philosopher is the Bhu, every idea expressed through him becomes a finite mote as it is brought forth. Poets all over the world get the same symbolic vision, the same allegoric language, inspiration of the same order. With the roots of their souls, they touch the life-giving water of the Spirit, expressing motes of wonder out of the absolute substance. When a grand guru speaks of unity, it's not a unity you arrive at through equations. Physicists know that all forms of matter are basically one energy, but that does not necessarily make them wise. What they have is only information about the theory of unity. If they were actually grounded in that unity, they would experience it differently. They would witness modulations arising out of the one substance and the infinite becoming extended in terms of the finite, with consciousness assuming the modes of the extended forms. Through and through they would be experiencing the absolute togetherness of the dual aspects of the all. Then they would be what is known in Sanskrit as Vishwamitra, a friend of the world, or Vasishtha, the one who dwells in all as a dear value rather than mere academics. When you sit in meditation and slowly absorb yourself into your own silence, the world disappears. Your own physical attributes disappear. In one sense, you are gathering everything together into your own center. At the same time, you are extending yourself within your consciousness in an unbounded, limitless expansion. The next moment, some need of the body or a social pressure can bring you back instantly to the world of name and form. Then your consciousness seems so small. It is a finite flickering within you, like a shimmering spark which is visible, not visible, experienced, not experienced, known, not known. The wonder that makes consciousness so expansive as to include everything, and so diminished it becomes less even than a faintly glowing spark, gives us an inkling of the ground to which we belong. When you attend to the nearly infinite number of finite motes, each in its own way gives you an experience of pain or pleasure. When you attend to your own ground, it is a deeper experience than what you have on the surface. It is a serene joy. Within it you are self-contained. There is no duality of I and the other. It is like returning to one's real home. It is one's own beingness. This is not a mere philosophical state. It is a very rich experience, full of love. There is an all-filling grace and benevolence permeating it. The Lord's Prayer said, "Thy kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven." There is an actualization or realization of that prayer in this experience. It can truly be said, all glory and power belong to it. And the free translation of verse 74 is as follows. In the earth there are innumerable particles, and in each particle there is a world of the same earth principle. Just as the body is conceptually envisioned by consciousness, consciousness is articulated by the body. When carefully considered, these are not two different things.